Welcome everyone to our board workshop this evening. We'll start with roll call, starting with Director Barrows.
Here.
Director Decker.
I'm here.
Director Smith.
Here.
And I'm also here. So our first item on the agenda is to review contracts. I will turn this over to you, Kathy, and your team.
Okay, so Brett Blechschmidt, our Chief Fiscal Officer, has several contracts he would like to review with us tonight. So Brett.
All right, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, we have a lighter load tonight. So I think we have 4 items. So I'll just jump right in with the first one. We're recommending that we approve a change order with Tapani Incorporated for work that's ongoing at the Jim Tangeman Center. This particular change order is about the excavation and fill and clearing of material from the previous building that was on that site. And I happen to be old enough to know that was the old John Rogers Elementary School. And so there was some remnants of John Rogers Elementary School that apparently was compromising the ability of the contractor to move forward with that. And so we've arrived at the appropriate cost of $136,916.58. So it is our recommendation that you would approve at your next meeting the change order for this additional civil work in the amount of $136,916.58 plus Washington sales tax to Tapani Incorporated. Are there any questions on that one? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to another change order to Tapani Incorporated, this one for Franklin Elementary. Franklin Elementary had a boiler system that was kind of locked into the roof and inaccessible to our folks. There was a plan to maybe just replace one of the boilers, but the more we got into that work, it was clear that it made a lot of sense to replace both boilers. The remaining one would have been on its last leg and still inaccessible without tearing the rafters apart. So this change order in essence replaces both boilers and also creates access from the roof so that they can be most properly maintained and hopefully not replaced, but when they are replaced, it won't require destroying the whole roof again. The change order again is to Tapani Incorporated. The amount is $175,101.86 plus Washington sales tax. Any questions on that one? All right, moving along. Third item is our recommendation to approve a purchase agreement number 2021-004 with what we refer to as HHPR, but their proper business name is Harper, Huff, Peterson, and I believe it's Regelis Incorporated. Their work is related to the Harney parking lot. We've gone through a couple different design options and we'll be meeting with school staff to really make sure that we get it right. But it will be an expansion and improved flow and drop-off pickup areas for parents so that the traffic can within the parking lot can move a little more effectively. So the amount of this contract is $118,500 plus Washington sales tax. And so it'd be our recommendation that we award that agreement. There's some language here, I won't read it, but there was an RFQ in which HHPR was determined to be the most qualified civil engineering firm when we started the bond program. Any questions on that one? All right, moving right along here. Our last item is a recommendation to approve revised constitutions and bylaws for 3 of our high schools. I won't read the entire thing. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's just adding or renaming several ASB clubs at these 3 schools. I think these are pretty routine activities on an annual basis. And so we'd like to give our ASB executive councils the latitude to govern in the way that makes the most sense to their students. So any questions on that one? All right, record time, I think, this time. Kathy, back to you.
I think you're on a
Or
roll.
Kyle, I'm not sure.
So the next one, we have nothing in policy for the board to review at this time. So the next ones we want to move to are teaching and learning, and Dr. Strom, our deputy superintendent, will start us off with that.
Yep, we have two items here. We have a request to approve instructional materials. These are both requests to approve supplemental high school and supplemental elementary, middle, and high. So language arts at the high school and history supplemental at the, just for those at all, actually history at all of those grade levels. And I don't think this is anything unusual. Are there any questions about that? Okay. All right, moving on to the second item. Pardon. We have a recommendation to approve a new mascot name for Columbia River High School. So on the March 9th board of directors meeting, there will be a recommendation that will be brought forward to share the four names that were really the outcome of a process that was established by Mr. Odopal and Mr. Gray. And they today, just to be clear, we're not voting on anything, but this is really about sharing the process that started actually back in August when we sat down. Jim Gray and I sat down with Alex to look at policy and procedure in terms of, so how does this take place, right? And I got to give a lot of credit to Mr. Odopal and Jim for putting together a really, I thought, well, I won't say extensive timeline, but I'm going to say it was a timeline that provided ample opportunity for stakeholder feedback. And I want to give Jim and Alex an opportunity at this time to walk through that process of engagement with the school community. And then I think they also have a guest here who was a part of that process. And then we can certainly take any questions. So, and that guest is Dylan. And he's in the corner there with us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gray. And he's going to talk a little bit about the early work. And then Alex will take it from there.
Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you again. As directed in VPS Board Resolution number 866, adopted on September 9th of 2020, and in alignment with the VPS Board Procedure 6970P, naming schools, facilities, and mascots, Columbia River High School began its work to identify and rebrand a new mascot. In alignment with 6970P Section G, a timeline, transition team, process, and implementation plan was created. Here tonight to walk us through the work and selection process over the past 6 months is Principal Alex Odopal and Dylan. To date, the 26 members of the Columbia River High School transition team have reviewed 711 different suggestions from staff, students, and the community. From this list, the transition team narrowed the list to 4 choices. Mr. Odopal, take it away, sir.
Mr. Gray, can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure
Yes,
my
sir.
sound is working. All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me a couple of moments to share with you our process. And I want to highlight first reintroducing Dylan to Vancouver Public Schools. Dylan is in the class of 2014. He was an IB scholar here at River. Dylan, if you could unmute real quick and tell us about your latest milestone, getting hired to work in Los Angeles.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Odopal. Class of 2014, I went to Tulane University. After that, in New Orleans, studied a bunch of stuff there, music, psychology, history. Then I went on to get my master's at the University of Colorado Boulder in music education. And I was on part-time graduate faculty there, and I just got hired to teach in Compton. So I'm in Los Angeles right now.
Wow. Congratulations, Dylan. And
Thanks, Kathy. It's good to see you.
May 21st, you're getting married.
Yes, that's true. I do have a wedding coming up. That's true.
Yeah. Keep track of those milestones. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah.
Dylan, thanks so much for being here. Dylan is representative of one of the 25 26, including me, members of our transition team. The team has rounded out 10 current students. This is the ASB executives and grade level representatives, so 10 students. We have 5 current faculty that are represented on this transition team, which included teachers, a counselor, and a couple of coaches. We have alums on this transition team from the class of 2014, Dylan, 2003, 1993, 1992, 1989, 1988, and 1970. And so I tried, when assembling this group of all-stars, it was trying to get a swath of the decades of Columbia River. If you don't know, 1962 was the original dedication of the high school here. So we have a lot of history we want to honor in this process. There are 5 community members, which include former teacher, our Booster Club president, who's currently also a parent, and several current parents on the team, myself included. So we have a lot of skin in this game. Our timeline, I broke this up into 2 phases. Between September and December, we solicited and received recommendations from the community. We did that with the support of our public information office through Pat Nusso, as well as John Proctor and Qualtrics, our data information systems. The transition team is working on multiple projects. One is, of course, the solicitation and review. The other is phase 2, which is moving forward. How do we examine our digital footprint? How do our activities match our new look, such as our yearbook, graduation cap and gown, and then that comes down to our community engagement. Dylan is on the team. I thought of him pretty quickly, thinking about if we need to change fight song, if we need to change layers of our history to make this appropriate with the direction of the board. So phase 2, at the direction of the board, we can move forward with our student selection process. It's critically important to me as a principal that we listen to our students in this process. We have an opportunity to rally our students around our identity. That's why our history is so important to all of us on this transition team. And I got to say, the dedication of this transition team is remarkable. Dylan was beaming in from Colorado for a time. We had a couple of students who were logging in and participating in our 8 meetings from the ski slopes all the way to the coast. So I'm just so grateful for their commitment to working with me in as we finish phase 1 of our process. So that's what I have today.
Hey, I have a question here, Alex. How many meetings and the board may have questions, but how many meetings did the group have?
So we had 8 like formal meetings. There was some time spent working with, getting in contact with parents, making sure that they were supportive of our students, current students participating, and then trying to track down a couple people. So
Just wanted to, if you said it, I missed it, I'm sorry.
Thank you both or all 3 of you for walking through the process, all 4 of you, excuse me, for participating and walking us through this process. It sounds like it's been a very thoughtful effort, so I appreciate that. The board received the name options in a briefing a couple months ago, I believe. So I wanted to just open it up for feedback and questions from the board members, if you have any, including our own Columbia River graduate.
I sent a series of emails to Alex and to Jim. We had received an email that had some concern over the Sasquatch name, and I had reached out to the same people that we reached out initially about the chieftains. And while they weren't as adamant about it being an issue for them, they did say it may be better to steer clear of it, but just because it's a mythical kind of part of some of their religion piece to it, their history, but it was not a don't do this. It was think twice about this one. So I'm just going to put that information out there for people to be aware of.
Yeah, that was one that I had kind of wondered about, just and not from a specific, group of people, what they thought, but just in general, because it's kind of a mythical creature, just if that might be something that wouldn't necessarily be received well kind of across the board. I just kind of wondered about that one.
Do you guys have any response? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
So can I, oh, I'm sorry, Wendy. I just want to, oh, this is the old stepping on each other here in Zoom. Because we're trying to be so respectful of each other. I just want to be clear, and again, Alex and Dylan may have something to say about that in terms of how you got to that point. The intention here obviously is to share the process and answer those questions relative to any one of the suggested names that came forward. Ultimately, the recommendation will come forward. The board will, per policy, will have that opportunity in the board meeting to obviously to vet it and decide whether or not ultimately you want to move forward with all four of those, or and let me just cite the policy because I actually think it's really clear and it might be helpful. And so in policy and procedure 6970 and section 3D, it says the committee will make a final recommendation of no less than 3 and no more than 5 mascot names to the superintendent for approval by the board of directors. It then further states that section 3E, it further outlines the process by stating the board will approve or disapprove the names nominated by the committee. And F, after approval by the board, students will select by majority vote 1 mascot name and symbol. And then section 4G6 further states that the board will approve the names or recommend further submissions by the committee, which if that were the case, that would take then a host of far more work and then prolonging this, right? So, but I wanted to be in full disclosure for the board. I wanted you to be aware that, like I said, I think it's important that you understand how they got to where they did now, but ultimately on the 9th is where you'll have, you will either move forward with those 4 names or 3 of the 4, or I mean, I picked a number. No, I just picked a number.
2 of the 4.
Yeah.
So Mike, that brings up a good question. It's not a, we approve all 4 to move forward, or we don't approve all 4. We could approve only 3 or only 2, we're not, it's not as a collective group. It's yes or no as a whole. Okay.
Per your discussion in the board meeting, you could determine to move forward with all 4 or 3 of the 4, right? And for whatever reasons you may come to that, which is a matter of also in part what we're talking about here today. So I just want to be clear because, Marilee and I have reviewed through this. There are a couple of different parts of the policy that I had to reference there, but I wanted to make sure we understood the process. Yeah.
And I don't want to belabor, I'm not bringing it up to belabor the point and to drag this on ad infinitum. I just wanted to say that we had received an email that suggested that there was an issue, and I checked on the issue, and I just wanted everybody to be up on what I had heard from the community.
Sure.
And that's it.
So Wendy, I'm so sorry I cut you off earlier. You had a question.
Well, I think I might cut you off, Mike. It's okay. Well, I do have a couple of questions. First of all, I want to extend my thanks to Alex and his committee and all of the work that's gone into this. So thank you, and Dylan, thank you. I want to echo my concerns around the Sasquatch one. I really would be hesitant to kind of create another problem with a mascot at Columbia River. And I think that one might just be, it might be a little too problematic. I would very much appreciate, Kathy, if you, did you have communication with any of the local tribes on this?
I did. Yes, I did. So basically what I did when we got that one email, I immediately sent out a all call to everyone, the local tribes, people that we had talked to, prior to say, hey, somebody sent us this email and I'm just doing due diligence to check, is this something that we should be concerned about? More than happy to send those emails, like have Kathy Everidge send them in a briefing or something so you guys could see what the response was. But overall, it's kind of I don't want to use the term sacred because it's not that in depth, but it has special meaning the meaning varies among the tribes people and also among the locations of the tribes people. So depending on who you're affiliated and where you're affiliated with that tribe, it may have some different meaning. So they said, they might recommend steering clear of it.
Okay, I would appreciate being able to see those emails since you have them.
Yep.
I'm going to be honest. I also have concerns about royals. I think that the colonialism that's evoked with that one might also be problematic. My question, though, is in the briefings that were sent to the board, which was very thorough, thank you. There were some results from a community survey and a student survey. Alex, can you kind of give us some context on that?
Yes, that was through the support of our data assessment team. We used Qualtrics to accept or receive the suggestions that were coming in. It was an effective way for the transition team to continue work and then have this data presented. And so what we looked at was essentially the repeated suggestions that came in. That's why you saw multiple suggestions and a couple of different iterations of different animals might be, right? So a hawk or an eagle and that kind of thing. And with those, we said, we're not going to be the hawk or the eagle because those are neighboring schools. So we did some filtering. The transition team then began to filter through those suggestions, and so we cleared some things up. We were being very mindful of just it being respectful, one of our history, and so I appreciate the conversation around with Kathy's follow up in the conversation around moving forward. And if it's 3 that go forward and not 4, we can work with that. That's perfectly fine.
So the survey results were from the recommendations that were sent in. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. So
Okay.
we collected all those. Yep. Through the month of October. I'm sorry. Through the month of October, we sent out we pushed out a couple of announcements in a couple of different venues, and just to ask for input. And it was the feedback was pretty. At times, a lot of fun to read, and other times not so much. But so I would say we did an effective job of engaging the community, and it was wonderful to reconnect with many of these alums, as you know, Wendy. I don't know if you put in a suggestion.
I didn't know. All right, thank you for that clarification, Alex.
Yep.
Like,
So, Tracy, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just, since this was kind of what Wendy was talking about. So you said there were I thought I heard 700 something submissions overall. Okay, so that's what I was clarifying too, because I saw survey results and it was 34 people voted for this. And I just, for a community-wide survey, I was like, that's not very many people, but that's the repeated submissions.
That would have been the repeat. You saw, okay. I think in the support documents, I think the where it says River under the community member survey, River, AKA no mascot, it came up 34 times out of the 700. So there's some significant, and so we took the top 4 for those.
The out of 700 is good to know, because I was like, oh, only 34, it just seemed like maybe only 100 people total might have voted. So I was like, oh, that doesn't seem like a wide survey. So
no, there's as you know, there's high interest in.
Well, that's what surprised me about those low numbers. So that makes sense if it was the repeats.
So Alex, I'm wondering, I think the board as a whole, and I apologize for speaking for us, but I think we support the notion that the school and the students are going to make this final selection. And so I appreciate you bringing it to us just to vet the names in advance. if I share Wendy's concerns about Sasquatch and Royals. I'm going to be totally honest. And I feel like this is an opportunity for a fresh start. So I do worry about having a name that potentially would have controversy as we move forward. But I worry also that 2 names is not sufficient to really provide student choice. So I wonder if you could just walk us through the timeline. I'm not suggesting that we go back and do the whole process over again, but if there is maybe only 2 names that the board is feeling comfortable with, is that sufficient choice for the students? And what would it take to maybe add, were there an obvious 5th and 6th choice that you could add in?
Dylan, do you want to speak to the idea that you?
Yeah. So I mean,
Present.
just walking through the timeline, you know, we had the 711 possible choices from the community stakeholders. We whittled that down to basically I think it was a sweet 17 as a group, because we all chose, everyone in the transition team was able to select 5 of their top choices. You know, I imagine the reasoning behind a lot of the choices was people had a top choice in mind and they automatically put that one. And then they filtered down, you know, the next 4 that they thought would be reasonable. And then from that sweet 17, we then all voted on our top 3 anonymously. And there wasn't any sort of discussion or debate about each of those. So there's really there's no way to know the thought process behind all of the individual voters necessarily, unless there were private conversations about them. But we chose our next top 3. And from there, it was whittled down to, okay, these are our 4: River Rapids, Royals, Sasquatch. But there's really no way to know, you know, what anybody's thought process was behind Sasquatch, for example. You know, I imagine some folks, maybe they had some sort of connection to folklore of the Pacific Northwest or some mysticism, and they weren't really thinking about it. But I'm not sure as far as, you know, thinking about any thought processes. But that's kind of the timeline and how the voting filtered down to this number. I don't know if there are any other questions about that.
So I know you don't have any like thought processes, but just take us through what you think, like, so the Royals, which seems to be, you know, a concern. In what context were we thinking, were you guys thinking Royals?
You know, I'm not sure. I don't think I didn't vote for Royals or Sasquatch, so I don't know how those got on there. But you know, Royals, it's alliterative. There's a sports team that's called the Royals.
Kansas
River
City.
Royals, it sounds good. To be honest, that might have been the extent of it, not thinking about any sort of you know, colonial ties between the meaning of royals or aristocracy or anything like that. I don't know what that thought process was. I think it just sounds good and it sounds easy, to be quite honest. I think a lot of people favor River in general. You know, from folks that I've talked to, the school's been known colloquially as River, you know, since before I was there. But I don't really know behind Royals. It's easy, basically, and I think it just sounds good to folks. So I think that was really the only thought process behind that.
Can I ask a question about the process in terms of at what point? Because I know part of when you were taking suggestions, the criteria, and I'm looking at that now, reflecting geographical or historical features of Hazeldale, Vancouver, or Pacific Northwest, avoid names that would cause confusions with other local high school mascots, logos, celebrate the rich traditions and history at Columbia River High School. So I guess at what point, you know, once you got it down to the 4 or maybe that sweet 17, did you guys relook at kind of those, you know, do these 4 all fit that, or was that just kind of in that initial process of what people thought of when they submitted suggestions?
Yeah, that was an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, that was an ongoing conversation. I think your question about a timeline, were you talking about the timeline for the next phase, or were you talking what?
Well,
exactly?
so I mean, I recognize that once this is decided, there are stadiums to be painted and uniforms to be ordered and all of the details to equip the school. And so it is not my intention to hold that up if we were to revisit the Sweet 17 list, for instance. But I also worry that if the board is uneasy about two of the choices, are we not offering enough selection to the students? That's where I'm kind of weighing right now, if that makes sense. So I just was interested in your feedback. I mean, is there a deadline? I mean, I assume we're not trying to make this effective for this spring sports seasons, but I mean, are we trying to just be set up for next fall? That was the timeline I guess I was going for.
Yeah, my hope was that in the spring, in
Okay.
end of April, we would be ready to go forward. There's and you know this, Kyle, there's so much going on. I want to get our kids some identity. I want to we need to rally our students around what we're doing. I'm looking outside my office. I can see we have ninth graders that are playing sports that haven't been in the classroom yet, and we have an opportunity to bring people together. And so that's the urgency that I have. And I know you all share it as well.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I was hoping for April.
Okay. No, that's helpful for us. In terms of, I mean, and I'm not saying this is where the board is leaning at all. I'm just curious if there's two names that were of concern tonight. Do you feel that two choices is sufficient for the students to make a selection? Or it's not ideal?
I don't know if I have an answer on that. I don't know. It certainly narrows the field. So
no, it does.
It makes our selection easier, just in terms of the student body participating.
Alex, can I ask a question about that student body, like voting? What, you know, like if there are two names or three names, like what is it really, like what education or, you know, like PR or whatever you want to call it, is there around the voting? I mean, is there information about what each of these names represents, or is it really just here are the two names, here's a survey, and there's not any context or any like, this is what Royals means, or this is what Sasquatch means, or do you know what I mean?
I do. Thanks for asking that, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about kind of a rebranding process. We may have an example of what a rapid logo might look like, and so that could be attached to the vote. We may have a let's see, or what I had submitted as part of the documents. There is a river. If we just have Columbia River, the CR logo stands. So it might be, here's the ballot and here's what the image might look like, and then allow students to go from there. I'm going to go back to the transition team though, and certainly get some input from that group, because they've been really actively and fundamentally helping guide this process. So I would have to go back to the transition team for some of those details.
Let me add too. I want to say that Jim and I had conversations with Alex too, you know, preparing for the possibility that there is a new, you know, there's a new name, a new logo that, and we talked with some folks who do this for a living, so that we get a sense of, so how might we go about this with a student body to kind of re-engage and get folks excited and rebrand and get some purpose right back around this work, particularly as we have high school students coming back, and that's potentially coming back, and that'd be exciting. So I know that that's part of I know that that's been part of the conversation with Alex. After we had that conversation, he did with the team more simultaneously. So we have some ability to really ramp up quickly with this, because we have folks that we can engage with this process to support us too, who do this, by the way, with other high school programs around the country. So that's a plus in terms of support. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Mike. I have one more question, just in terms of the second option, Columbia, the rivers. Just how Dylan mentioned that it was a popular choice, and it obviously lends itself. We all affectionately refer to it as river. is there any concern that the absence of a mascot like Columbia River, that there would be a use of chieftain by default, or in our rebranding, it's going to be very intentional? You know, I don't know, are we thinking Columbia River Rivers or just Columbia River and that's the mascot? I'm just kind of wondering, maybe you can talk me through that.
Yep. So my experience with this, just on Saturday last week, we had a football game against Woodland at Woodland. Their announcer was on the money. He announced Columbia River, a river touchdown multiple times. It flows pretty smooth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dylan.
And I was, having now on my third kid through, it was almost always go river, yay river, and here comes river. The use of the outgoing logo or mascot was used occasionally, but not nearly as much as like Hudson Bay Eagles or, the other schools, the Storm or whatever. It's not used nearly as much because most of the people just called it river, and that was the way it went. And a lot of the uniforms and everything all just have CR on them or just have river. There are a few that very small would have the chieftain logo on it, but not very many.
Alex, it's my understanding that most of the logos utilized now are some variation of the CR logo anyways, correct?
Yeah, we've
Chieftain.
began phasing in just the CR that's on the field outside. I have it all over the office here, but yes, we began phasing that in. It's on the banners in the parking lot. So yeah, we began phasing that in about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
Thank you, Colorado Rockies.
But yeah, we want to be, we don't want to be associated with any other organization, because there's only one Columbia River High School.
Right. That's right. I know.
Your principal right there.
Yeah. The guy that's so proud of River.
I'm just curious if any directors have any more questions. I think it's very clear what the conversation will be on the 9th. We'll kind of talk through what options to move forward. I want to thank everyone for your thorough work on this. I think it's really, community engagement was critical to this process. So thank you for a thoughtful process. And we will revisit this on the 9th. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Dylan.
Thank you, you
Thanks.
guys, Alex and Dylan. Thank you very much for being here.
Congratulations. Whoa,
Thanks.
LA.
Appreciate it.
So I'm going to turn this back over to Kyle for Board of Directors and Superintendent report. Kyle.
Yes, I just wanted to give a quick update for the community watching that we last week, as part of our superintendent search, conducted 3 different interview formats. As most people know, we conducted a national superintendent search with the help of an outside consultant. And we narrowed the candidates, or the applicants, we got down to 4 candidates who we interviewed last week. There was a community interview on Tuesday evening, and there was a survey available. We got great response from the survey. We'll be reviewing that tonight. Additionally, we had a stakeholder group that represented a lot of our different kind of stakeholders in the community, and they conducted interviews on Wednesday and Thursday night, simultaneous to the board conducting interviews. So tonight, the board will be recessing to executive session at the conclusion of this meeting, and we'll be reviewing all of the feedback we've received from the stakeholder groups, the community survey, and then we'll also be deliberating on our own interviews. So that was just an update to the process. There is possible action to follow if we make a selection for candidates to come in for a final round of interviews.
And the other topic that we have in the Board of Directors Superintendent report is a high school reopening update. And Jim Gray, you're on the lead for this.
Well, hello, everyone, again. We're planning to begin hybrid learning for high school students on March 8th and 15th. The target dates for high schools to begin hybrid instruction are contingent on staff and local positive new cases, case rates of fewer than 200 per 100,000 people over 14 days, but you know that already. We plan to begin with our 9th grade students on March 8th. Our 10th through 12th grade students would begin on March 15th. In preparation for these start dates, high school families were sent the parent survey last Friday afternoon, February 19th. The parent survey closed today at 5 p.m. In the surveys, families were essentially asked to choose one of three choices for their family: attend school on a hybrid schedule, remain in full remote learning, or attend online school through Vancouver Virtual Learning Academy. Tomorrow, principals will receive a list of non-responsive families to the parent survey. Building teams have already been created to call each non-responsive family to get their feedback regarding those three choices. Additionally, students were sent a reminder email yesterday asking them to check with their parents regarding the survey. Thought it was a great idea. We can do that with high school kids. Hopefully that helped jog parents along. The staff survey.
My high school student had a different opinion than his parents did about whether or not he was going to wake up at 6:30 in the morning. Just saying.
Well, then we created good conversations, right? We created good conversations. There you go. The staff survey was sent to each certified staff member last Friday too. Essentially, staff were surveyed relative to their plans for returning to the building. This survey was due this afternoon. Principals and HR will use this data to determine priority staffing needs and supports needed for individual certified staff. The early returns on the staff survey showed the vast majority of our high school staff intended to return to the classroom when we begin hybrid instruction. However, the finalized data is being disaggregated and should be available early tomorrow. Finally, VPS this week was sent to the community last Friday, outlining the targeted high school start dates and relevant information, followed up with an individual email from each high school principal relative to their individual communities. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jim, for putting that together. I just asked Kathy late last week, so thank you for the update. I'm going to open the floor to other directors if you have questions. Anyone have any questions or concerns? Okay. I'm going to say I heard from an educator today who teaches middle school at Thomas Jefferson, and she said she had all sorts of nerves going into this week, but it has been the best week of her year. So thank you for everyone and your efforts to pull this together and get more kids back in school. Okay, I think that with that, we are at the end of our agenda. So the board will be recessing for executive session to discuss the qualifications of candidates for public employment. There will be possible action to follow. Just to clarify, I have no idea how long these discussions will take tonight. So I'm going to estimate 2.5 hours. I will check in hourly and we will go from there. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good evening again. The directors are still in executive session. We expect perhaps another hour. I will check back in at approximately 7:45. We are back. Thank you everyone for your patience. The directors have completed our deliberations for the evening, and we are prepared to move forward in the process. Do I have a motion?
Yes, so I would like to make a motion that we move forward Dr. Hurst and Dr. Snell to the final round of interviews.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments to add? I just wanted to share that the board appreciated all 4 candidates. We saw so many great qualities and strengths, and just they all participated in our process. I think they were invested in it, and they really shared a lot of themselves. So we're so thankful for everyone that participated in this process. We are also very appreciative of the community level of engagement. We received a lot of input, and a lot of people reviewed the community forum last week. So thank you everyone for your participation. Anyone else want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add, I really appreciated all of the community feedback, really thoughtful comments about each of the candidates in terms of what qualities they could bring to our district, and just really the time, whether it was attending the community forum or watching the forum afterwards, but just, we read through all of the comments from the community forum, from the stakeholder interview process, and others that sent us emails or reached out to just give us feedback. I think we're really excited about the community's investment in this process. So thank you to everybody who is in it with us.
Yeah, I would just echo how valuable the feedback we've gotten from the community and the stakeholder interviews both were so helpful. And I really, really appreciate everybody who gave their feedback. And I also just want to thank all 4 candidates for their participation, because I cannot express we were so blessed with such wonderful candidates. And it really has been a pleasure speaking with all of them and getting to know all of them. And then I also want to extend my thanks to Steve Louder, who's been so amazing helping us through this process and has been just a wonderful resource. And he's been fantastic, and I really appreciate all of the effort he's made to help us too.
Yes, and one more note, just to touch on what Tracy said, there were a few people that emailed us today because they did not get their survey in before it closed. And I do want to provide assurance that we read each and every email received, all the messages we received, in addition to the hundreds of survey responses. So thank you, everyone. So with that, we are adjourned. Oh, we're going to vote. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I'll do this quickly. Director Barrows.
Approve.
Director Decker.
Approve.
Director Smith.
Approve.
And I also approve. So we will be moving forward with those 2 finalist candidate interviews next week, ideally. So more information will follow. Thank you. We are adjourned.